Something that I say along the way will touch you. I know it. Let's begin that process of crafting a meaningful life.
Here's Mary Crafts.
Good morning, and welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. Boy, do I have a show for you today. You're just going to absolutely love it because I have my daughter back on the show with me. And what I learned the other day from my producer, when I told him that I was going to have Meagan back with me, he said, Mary, are you aware that your number one, the most watched podcast you've ever done is the show you did with your daughter the last time? And I didn't know that. I mean, I can imagine that because she's so fabulous and that people want to tune in. And I think people love to tune into things that are real to them. And definitely the topics that we talk about here are real. But there are so many of you, because we know that 85% of you are women, that so many of you obviously either are a daughter or have a daughter or have been a daughter. And that kind of relationship becomes increasingly important to us as we try and figure out, well, this isn't where I thought I would be with my daughter when I was 30, or I didn't think this is how I'd be with my daughter at 50. And this is where I hoped I would be with my daughter at 70. So that is the great piece. And I think people tune in because they love to see that interaction between us. But this morning, we have some great things to talk about. So welcome to my beautiful, beautiful daughter, Meagan. Meagan, I call you Meagan Crafts, but I know you're Meagan Price. So welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So the last time I hadn't even done this technology where we could be apart and we had to sit in the same room to record. And this time, you're 50 miles away from me and I'm up here and we're recording and it's going to work.
Yes.
But the only difference is that I don't get to hug you at the end. I think everyone loved seeing that, just that mom-daughter. But that's okay. I'll hug you tomorrow. All right, Meagan. So let's first start off with talking about our relationship has gone through lots of transition. And I'm okay with however you want to take this podcast because that vulnerability piece that I talk about so much, I apply here on my show as well. And I try and be open and honest and naked with my listeners so that emotionally naked. I don't show up here naked, but emotionally naked so that they can really see the process and what that looks like. So I'm just going to let you kind of take it from here and talk about what our relationship was kind of like in the beginning and how it deteriorated and how we began to build that back. Because I believe that there are people who would love to know the process. And even though they may not admit that they don't have the best relationship with their daughter, that they want that. And that maybe they don't have the best relationship with their mom, but they want that. So why don't I let you start with that?
It's funny when you were describing that, I was like, I very clearly could recall the times that you're clearly speaking of. But I feel like our relationship has always been in stages of growth. Which means, just like any growth, there are ups and downs as you get closer and closer to a relationship. As you were sitting here talking about that, I don't know that you've ever even seen the show Gilmore Girls. But there's a quote from that in the second or third season where the main character tells her mom asks, why are you such good friends with your daughter and we can't be friends at all? And she says, Mom, because Rory and I are friends first. You and mom and daughter second. You and I are mom and daughter always. And there was a time where we were mom and daughter always. And then there was a time where I didn't know how to deal with myself, and so I pushed away from you.
Ah,
And then there was this beautiful period where, as we go through our own healings, and that we get closer. And that whole experience is all the time. I mean, like any snapshot of any given year, we go through probably all three of those periods multiple times.
in fact, in the same conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Where it's like really, really painful for a second, and it's like really hurting me, and it's hurting you, and everyone's crying. And then there's like that denouement where like we come back down, and we're like, but because
Yeah.
the more and more truths I know about myself, the more and more truths and grace I can give you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate that grace that you give me now, that ability to have made mistakes and that ability to ask for forgiveness and that ability to forgive myself for those years of trauma that you experienced. And I think for us, we've always had this desire to be friends, but it wasn't until that we were able to let down those barriers with each other and the protective layers where, you know, I can remember times just calling up your dad and just saying, I don't know what's wrong with Megan, but she won't even put on her clothes this morning.
Being
I
negative
don't know
was
how
a
I'm
real
going to.
thing. When you said that, I was like, I'm game. Is that an option? All right.
And and I never one time said I was aware of what is it that I am creating, that this relationship is of this power struggle happening between us. And that didn't begin to happen until we no longer lived together. Would you say that that was a turning point for us? I don't either. I think the
It's when
turning
we
point was
stopped
something
working
different
together.
when we stopped working together.
Yeah.
So just 5 years ago?
Yeah. Because two things happened that year. One, you stopped working in culinary crafts. And two, I became a mom. Huge, big pieces. That happened in the same calendar year. And within
Yeah.
months of each other, it changed our dynamic. Because one, for the first time, I understood what it was like to love another thing that I like more than myself. It was a big deal. And I also learned like how I can love something that unconditionally and simultaneously be terrified. I couldn't have told you that in 2018, but I can tell you now, like I was so terrified of Tristan. I just was so scared. I didn't know
Your
what to
son.
do. I was so afraid of like screwing him up, and I'm like, well, oh my gosh, like what if you shake him too hard? Like I mean, like I was so scared, and not those are scared of like things.
What if I'm the kind of mother my mother was?
Yeah, and then I was also scared of like I don't know what to do with him. Making the kid was super easy. I like understood the mechanics, but like, what do you do with a child after? Just because Clayton and I had such different childhoods, and so like Clayton had this expectation of like fun, and I was like, I have this expectation of learning and structure. That was my childhood. So just very different. And I don't know how to have fun like Clayton has fun, so that's okay. Just different.
Yeah.
Um,
We have more fun now.
yeah, and it's very different now. And so I think that for me, the biggest change was this like. Apparently, I just want to speak in quotes today. This was another quote that I found extremely powerful. In the new Barbie movie, at the very, very end, the creator of Barbie, the actual woman that created Barbie, I think her name's Ruth, she has this line where she says, mothers stop. So, and while their daughters keep moving forward. So when their daughters look back, they can see how far they've come.
What do you think that means to you?
Oh my God. I always felt like I was running to keep up with you. That's where our relationship dynamic came from. It had nothing to do with you. It had nothing to do with even like the relationship piece. It had to do with that I didn't view myself as enough and that I wanted to be where you were. And so I was running after you.
Yeah. I think that is one of the biggest turning points of healing for us was when you realized that I was running to keep up with me.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
You were running to keep up with me? I was running to keep
You were
up
running to keep up with me too. It was exhausting. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's
Because I had this vision of what I needed to do and be in order to be enough. And so constantly running after that because of that feeling of never being enough.
Yeah.
Which I got from my mom.
Yeah.
Which now I know she got from her mom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously, Meagan, the generational change that we are creating now is phenomenal.
Yeah.
That our hope is that then Tristan will not have to play that running to keep up game with you.
I don't know.
With his dad.
There's already some of that. Where you, like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I crush motherhood. I am killing it. But there's moments where I'm like, oh no. Oh God. Okay. I am signing up to spend the next X years fixing this. And it had everything to do with me and nothing to do with Tristan. But now something that Tristan's picked up and now we get to spend time fixing. And not even fixing, because that intimates that it's wrong. It's just that I know that there's healing beyond that.
Yeah.
So
I think that's one of the things that I love the most about our relationship now is that healing process, that ability to be 100% open and vulnerable. And I remember when we started down that journey and there was just so much sobbing and release of pain on your part. And as a mom, it was so hard to hear. Knowing that at the root of a lot of that pain was me. And so, but to be able to give you a safe place to release all that pain to some extent. And then to take ownership. And to be able to see myself and my feeling of lack and how I was trying to create this perfect illusion of who my children were, because that was the only way that I could be perfect also if they were perfect. And that was exactly the feeling that I always had from my mom. That I had to be perfect, that I never was enough. And of course, when you're young, you swear, what? I am never going to treat my children this way. And that was exactly how I did it. Because that was my patterning. That's what I knew. That was my role model. And I didn't take the time to dissect it enough to understand it early enough in my life. And that's something you've done. You know, you're only 31.
So I think I'm 32.
Oh yeah, that's right. You turned 32 in May. Yes.
So I talk about this a lot, about the connection to the divine or to the universe, to whatever the higher power is that you would like to use. And I wish I had a diagram so I could show you. Usually I draw this. That there are 3 pieces in traditional Chinese medicine, we call them Jing, Qi, and Shen. Your physical body, your energy body, and your spirit body. Or you might call them, right, your mind, your heart, and your soul, whatever division you call them. Or your, the way I draw this, I write your superconscious, your conscious mind, and your subconscious. When I describe these, the conscious mind is the one running the show. It's the one that is
Well, it's the one you think is running the show.
well. So most people, then we go back and forth with like, well, is that the one running the show, or is it the subconscious mind that's running the show? Right? This like, so I call them the conscious mind. I call them mother mind, and the subconscious mind is the child mind. And we often talk about like that the wounded child, the story that's running the show, is the one that's right, whatever something. But that's not where the hurt is, right? That would insinuate that the trauma that happened is actually what's running the show. It's not. What's happening is that the mother mind is shaming the child, is shoulding the child, is correcting the child, like that this was fine, but if you ever think that, that's what's happening, that's what's running the show, is actually the relationship between the conscious and the subconscious mind. Because the conscious mind is like, I know better, I should be different, I should have let this go, or like the world should be different, right? It should, like this child, wherever she is now, I can't accept fully because of where she was.
Yeah.
So this is the thing about, so I mentioned like Tristan, it has this new pattern that just came up this week, and I was like, oh no, don't walk right on this path. The thing is that even though the trauma that initiated that, the trauma was that mom used to be super angry all the time. I'm not anymore, which is great. But Tristan now has developed a fear that like, if I say something, mom's going to be mad. Even though that's not the case. And even though I'm not mad, the fear is still there. And so even though I get to take accountability for the original behavior, that was all me. Eventually, Tristan is going to have to own that every decision he makes from here on is his. It was never because of me. It was never because of how I would react. It was never his choices to be in integrity are his. Even at 5, it doesn't matter. They are his. It's the same between you and I, Mom. Is that you're right. There was a huge level of abandonment and a huge level of perfectionism and shame that you were dragging along and put on your kids. That happened. But every decision after that was mine.
Right.
Every decision, every lie I told, every time I got angry, every time I expected perfectionism of me and beat myself up until I was. That every single one of those choices was mine. And the beautiful part is that it is possible to painlessly be accountable for that. I can own that. And when accountability becomes painless is when healing occurs. Because then I no longer need you to show up as the villain in my life. When I need to play victim when I need to play victim to my own behaviors, my own choices, like that someone else was making the choice, someone else was driving this. You had to show up as the villain in my life. It just had to be. There was no other option. But the second I let that go, I no longer need that. I no longer need you to show up as the bad guy. And, great news, neither do I. I can own that, like, oh, this is 100% where I was. It caused this situation. And now I will get to be the voice of reason, the hand of healing for Tristan. And I'm thrilled that we're there at 5 instead of at 65.
Yeah.
It's generational change.
It is. And that we are healing that generational thing that we had going on in our family.
Yeah.
I love that. And every single person that's listening has the opportunity to shift those generational patterns and heal this generation that you're in right now.
Yeah.
And everyone that comes after this. Yeah, it's such a beautiful, embracing, loving, understanding concept. You know, one of the things I love most about our relationship now, Meagan, is really how truly good friends we are. Like, we're the best friends.
Oh, yeah.
And I think about, I'm so glad this happened now, because that means we have 30 more years of being in this totally wonderful best friend relationship. It doesn't matter when you call me or I call you, and it's just a short thing. Hey, I just have a quick thing.
An hour later.
Or two. I mean, like, I look down at my phone and it'll say an hour and 38 minutes.
Oh, yeah. No question.
What were we talking about all that time?
I didn't even know what we were talking about.
But inevitably, because so much of the time we function on the same consciousness level, that we get in that form of talking and understanding and sharing. And I think it was the other day that you said to me, did you ask me the question of if I believed in God? Or did that come from you were saying something and then you refresh my memory, young
the
one.
The conversation was something like, I know you're old. I got it. You can't remember. No, the conversation was something akin to I had used the word God, which is something that I haven't used for probably a decade since I stepped back from the LDS Church. In the last 3 months, I've begun using it all the time. And I mean, I refer to this deity all the time, which is kind of a weird change of pace for me.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned something about hate that that came about in my life because I realized that my spouse was in this space of anger towards God. And I said that to you. I was telling you that. This is
oh, that's how
happened. And
I remember now.
Yeah, and there was something like that, have you ever felt anger like that towards God? And you were like, well, I don't know that I believe in a singular masculine being that is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're.
The idea that there's one person and that he is male.
Yeah.
And he's in charge of everything.
And you said that once on this phone call that was an hour and a half long. And then we kept talking about it, and you said it again, that exact same way, this superior being that's male. And that's when I stopped you.
Not superior so much as I know that I'm fine that there are many people who are evolved beyond me. It's the word singular.
Singular. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you use the word singular and the word male, this biggest piece of the concept that we use in the Christian realm, that this masculine being. And that's the part that for me I was like, ooh, let's time to educate.
Yeah.
The teacher in me wants to share.
Let me teach my mom.
It's time to share. Because I understand that the concept of God is masculine and how we speak to it, but so in whether we talk about it in physics, whether we talk about it in Taoist principles, Buddhist principles, Christian principles, isn't the concept of God that he's transcended this state, or this duality where masculine and feminine, that concept in our minds, exists.
But just now, even you described it as that he has transcended.
So why is the word tripping you up? Because we don't have a word for it.
Well, I'm a woman of the 60s.
We don't have a word for this. This concept that I'm describing, there's not a word for it in English language. There is masculine and feminine, and that is it. So I can either use the word he or she. Both are wrong. God, and whether I'm referring to the divinity inside of myself, or I'm referring to the highest point in the universe, or the singularity, as they would say in physics, that there is a single point from which everything else descends. Everything else in the universe came from one single point.
I agree with that.
That's the point. And if that's the case, masculine and feminine came from a single point. But it is neither masculine nor feminine. And so I don't have a word. I literally, in the English language, do not have a word for what I would call that. There's not a pronoun for it.
Yeah.
And this,
I'm with you.
With this a lot, even in social, people who are transcending this duality and don't have a word for it. So we want to shove around pronouns like they, them. Okay, none of them are the right pronoun for this concept that like trying to transcend the duality.
Yeah.
They're just monikers to trying to sort the chaos. That's all I'm trying to do. Sort the chaos.
And I think that in the work that you and I have done in terms of healing, we've had to come to the point of realizing that within ourselves, we have both masculine and feminine, that they exist as one inside of us. Sometimes one, the right leading the masculine side, and simply we say masculine because of the traits that are involved there, but also because of the physical characteristics. And then sometimes the feminine is leading. And in our world today, we became lopsided with so much of the masculine leading and the feminine having so little value. That's what felt like I was always working for, not one superiority over the other, but the need and the existence of both simultaneously, and that I am not a complete being without one or the other. I loved how beautiful you put this the other day on this conversation, which we should have just recorded for all the world to hear. That when you said how much you were in awe the entire time you were pregnant with Tristan.
Oh yeah.
Share with people about what you said to me about that.
I don't know if I'm the only mom in the world that thinks this, but that my body is amazing. I was growing things that I don't even have.
Yeah.
So did you ever stop and think about that? Like, I literally grew a penis and a genetic code, and I grew a Y chromosome that I don't even have. I'm not duplicating. I'm genuine creation.
Yeah.
Which tends to it throws into light that masculine concept. The masculine feminine is only a way that we try and sort. We try and describe the polarity, the duality in our lives. Even like heaven and earth. The divine light of both of those concepts are complete within themselves. They just are. I, as a feminine representation on this plane, am a complete version, masculine and feminine. I am complete. Because I am the microcosm of the macrocosm, right? And the macrocosm of the microcosm. I'm both. So when I show up with my husband, I am the feminine to his masculine. And sometimes I'm the masculine to his feminine. It's both.
It's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that's one thing I love about the awakening, for example, with Clayton, your husband, and even with John at this age in his life, to awaken to, he had pushed away for so long those, what he considered feminine characteristics. I'm the jock, I'm the athlete, I'm this, I don't cry. And just last night we were even sitting on the sofa and he turned to me and said, do you know why I'm able to feel these things now that I haven't felt before? And I said, why? And he said, because of you. I said, I don't know about that. He goes, no, seriously, because of you. And I wanted to accept all the glory, but I said, do you think they weren't inside of you before? And he thought for a minute. He goes, no, I guess they probably were. I said, but until now, there was not a safe place to let all of you be seen. Yeah. And that's what we've created here. And I think that's how it is with you and Clayton and John and I, and in many relationships, groups, we create safe places for all of us to be seen, and not just what we think society thinks is right to be seen.
And I mean, the concept of and how you have to show up, I think, is changing. And I feel that pressure less than I ever have before. Of just what you said there, I can show up in however I am and whoever I am. And it's not only is it enough, it's exactly what it's supposed to be. And it's beautiful.
In fact, when I was in my garden this morning, you know about what I call my sacred garden now. In the back, I start every day. And that's the one thing I felt so grateful for, is that I'm no longer feeling those outside pressures on me to be something that I'm not, to perform something that I'm not. Mm-hmm. And when I got home last night, KL, your niece, my granddaughter, had a tennis match, and Kaysen, my grandson, your nephew, had a baseball game. And I got home about, 6:30 or 7. And usually I'm like, oh, there's still 3 more hours in the day. Let's see what I can get done. But I was able just to say, I want to rest now. And to be able to take time to rest other than when I'm in bed and sleeping. Mm. To take time to just be. Mm. And allow those outside pressures of what else and who and just go. And I could just relax without sleeping. Can you understand what a foreign concept that is to me?
Yeah. So there was a time when I was in college, I lost a job. I wanted to be hired. I interviewed because they didn't think I could do all the things I could do. One of the questions in the interview was like, here's a list of 14 things. What of this, and you only have one night, where would you prioritize? And I was like looking at the list, and the list was like, go to this party, support this person, finish this paper, do these things. I can't even remember everything that was on the list, but I looked at the list and I was like, I could do all of this in a single night.
I just get it all.
Well, I don't need to cut any of this. I could do all of this. And I asked later on why I lost the job, because I got the job the next year, and they were like, 100% because you thought you could do it all. I was like, because I can, and I did.
Yeah.
And
call my mom. She does it too, and I can too. She's role modeled. She's role modeled that to me.
It all. And even there's times where people ask, how do you, work a full-time job and be a mom and do all this? And I'm like, oh, because I can, I'm not even at my full running capacity at this moment in time. But
yeah,
there is a difference between that I can and what a beautiful skill. And that it doesn't matter what I accomplish. That as long as I'm here right now.
Yeah.
So what I do in my day-to-day life actually has become to matter less to me, because I am more focused on how much can I stay right here. And no matter what I'm doing or what's next or where we're going, or if I can be right here, right now with you, then it's enough. It's exactly what it's supposed to be.
It is enough. I've always had such a hard time focusing on the now. And now, because of my morning practices, I can bring it in right now. Where I release the past in this figure 8 and then embrace the future, and brings me to this point, this intersection point of now. And when I do this in the morning, I think the one thing I always ask, are there messages for me? Is there something that I want to be aware of myself and that I want to teach myself? Or what, and I kind of bring it to here. Inevitably, Meagan, there might be other things, but the one thing that is every day at that intersection point of past and future, at that intersection point, the one overwhelming thing is gratitude. And that it keeps me in gratitude so much, being in the now.
Oh, yeah.
There's not one thing that I'm not I don't have. At that moment, I have every single thing I need.
I tell people that gratitude is the cheat code out of wherever you are. It was sewn into the fabric of existence that the fastest way out of wherever you are is gratitude.
All right, so I want to transition in our conversation to another piece that happened in that hour and 38 minutes that we talked, and then we spent 4 minutes saying goodbye, so it was an hour and 42 minutes. But it's crazy. It's a good thing that our phone have those timers, or we would be there and it'd be
All
like,
day.
oh, I was supposed to pick up Tristan 10 hours ago.
100%.
So, but we began talking, and we kind of started talking about this, but then we got, like we always do, caught up in a different direction. A way that you check yourself on being accurate, I'm not quite sure how to say this, accurate in your feelings and your emotions.
I mean, this kind of came out of the concept, the topic when we were talking about this God concept, is because when I started substituting, whenever I use the word I, can I honestly substitute the word God for the word I in a statement that I'm saying? So for example,
Okay.
I'm so frustrated. Could I substitute the word God there? Or again, for whatever, as for your viewers, if God's not the right word, the universe, divine, the isness, the Tao, can I
Source.
substitute that word? The source, can I substitute that word for the word I in that phrase?
In this
pressed.
incident, I became immediately comfortable with the word God because without masculine or feminine, but a universal oneness of God,
Yeah.
that became the concept I wanted to start asking myself.
Yeah.
If I'm like using the word, I'm so depressed over this situation.
No.
And could I repeat back and say, God is so depressed over this situation? The almost comedic state of that is to think like, no, that's not how God works. He's not frustrated over this situation.
But even like that, so I tell people, stop saying I am, stop identifying with depression or anger or anxiety or a disease. But and then people are like, well, then what do you say? Or even your name, I am Meagan Price. No, I'm not. What a ridiculous concept. But that, can you? So they're like, so what do you say? I'm like, well, I'm called Meagan Price. My name is Meagan Price. I'm going through a bout of depression, or this situation is causing me to feel depressed. Even that in the new sentence is a little hard because I'm like, ooh,
yeah.
Do you think that the divine would feel depressed at this situation? I don't know. Because I mean, we're state of Ukraine and war in our country, the rapid use of pornography and sexual abuse and the sex trade in America, and oh God, okay. But could God feel sadness at that? Yeah, okay. So that I'm experiencing that right now, the same way that the divine experiences it. But I can also see it with gratitude of where it's brought my life. Because it can be both. This is the part that I tell people that is honestly where I lose a lot of clients. I lose a lot of clients when I try and it was wrong and simultaneously can be the best thing for you. I say that about our relationship a lot. You asked about that, that there were times where it was just wrong and it wasn't okay. And it was what was supposed to be. It was the best thing that I could have imagined because it brought about this moment right here.
Yeah. If we hadn't had that moment, we wouldn't be at this moment. I wouldn't be here.
And I wouldn't trade here and now for anything. I wouldn't trade here and now for anything.
I think a lot of people ask me, how did you survive this or how did you survive days and this and that? And I'm like, well, first of all, with accountability, realizing that every single step was my choice, every one of them. And when you step into accountability, the great news, sometimes the hard news is that you're accountable.
Yeah.
But then the great news is that you can shift.
Yeah.
If you're a victim, you can't do any shifting.
Nope. And it just
But
is.
when you're accountable, you can shift.
Yep.
I was able to shift and say, this no longer works for my life.
Mm-hmm.
And with you and I could shift and say, I'm now healed enough that I can see your pain and feel your pain and be here for you as we walk through it.
And
if I was still the same woman that I was at age 50, we wouldn't have this.
Oh, yeah. And if I was the same person I was yesterday, we wouldn't have this. That's the great news. Yeah. That's the great news. And the thing is, like, I have a lot of friends, family, coworkers, and even me, and there was a time where I was like, I was so angry with you that I was like, I'm cutting Mary out of my life. She can't babysit Tristan. She can't come to my parties. She can't come to my house. I cannot have her. So I'm just going to cut and run. And that's a sign of, and at the time, I was like, that's a sign of healing. I know I'm healing because I'm able to do that. Yeah.
And just think if you would put the word God in there. God is going to cut and run.
Yeah, what the hell?
God's not going to allow Mary in my life anymore.
That's God's going to. And again, because I was like, oh my gosh, she's so this, she's so that, she's doing. I do the substituting for God in anytime I use any pronoun. Is God so that? No. Okay. So what is it in me that's being triggered by her actions?
Yeah.
Because it's not about you. It doesn't matter what you do. You as my mom. It didn't matter how you showed up. It honestly didn't. You could have done anything, and I would have been mad. It didn't matter because I was hurting. It had nothing to do with you. You were not a part of the equation there.
And we believe that. We want to push it out there because that's safer to be out there. It's how we protect ourselves
for a second.
And it's sometimes how we survive for a moment. But inevitably, that coming back. I can remember different times I've given talks and about this very thing. And afterwards, a woman came up to me just absolutely sobbing and looking at me and said, so what you're saying is that my dad, who was abusing me all those years, I was accountable for that? I was responsible for that? And I could see and experience her pain at that thought. And I just wrapped her up in my arms and I said, no, your dad is accountable and responsible just like you for his actions.
Yes.
But you are then equally accountable for yours. For how you step into that, how you allow that to affect your life, how you then, because of that, how you then step out of that pain to heal that pain, what you're doing with your life right now, whether or not it's affecting your marriage now because you're reliving, your dad's actions, all those things are your choices now. And that healing cannot ever happen in that victim position.
Mindset. It just can't. The thing is, and it's okay. It's because that's where everyone is. And you, I guarantee you, were never given the tools to find that accountability. You were never given the tools. You were never given the tools. Yeah. It just didn't exist. It certainly didn't exist in my life. And don't get me wrong, Mom. You were the taskmaster of we don't play victim in this house. Well, that was true. I didn't have the tools to not. So except for being being able to recognize. You certainly taught me that about being able to recognize this is playing victim. This is playing victim. This is being victim in your own mind.
Yeah.
Now I have the tools. I literally have all the tools and I'm constantly on the hunt for more of how to overcome those, and not even overcome, to yield to them. Because just like you said, having to accept accountability of like, if you ever think the thoughts, I did this because, if there's any because beyond like,
Right.
it can be anything. It was a Tuesday. It was, I made that choice. There doesn't need to be a because. It doesn't have to exist.
Because
trying to justify
following
your life.
the word because is always an excuse.
It's an excuse.
And excuses are just one more
I don't need
tool
to
in the
justify.
toolbox of a victim.
Yeah. And it's okay. And here's the thing, is that it can simultaneously be not okay. It can be wrong, bad, disappointing, evil, dark. It can be all those things. And it can be okay. And that's the part where people's minds start to be like, what? No, it can't.
Yeah.
And I give the example of you and I, Mom, that like, we have abuse in every form of the word in our history. In our family, this is just kind of where we come from. And I can say that those moments were not okay. Mm-hmm. And simultaneously, that like, the choices I made afterwards are. Because I am okay with me.
Yeah.
And the closer and closer I get to remembering who I truly am and what I truly am, the need to define myself by other people's actions falls away.
I love that. That's so powerful. All right, Meagan, unfortunately our time is gone. And I could talk to you, as you know, for hours. We didn't talk for an hour and 42 minutes, so that seems to be our pretty much standard time. So I feel like there's so much more I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to really talk about it for those people. Maybe we're just going to take another minute, because I know this is long. But I just would like your perspective for my listeners. For those people who are yearning for something more with their daughter, with their mother, with their father, with their son, what are the steps? Where did they begin?
I would have said the first step was you have to decide that you want that. You have to decide that you want something different. My journey came because I came face to face with death. And I was like, not okay with it. And I knew something had to change. Not everyone is given the gift of that brutality. And so in order to make that choice, that I can understand that my peace is my priority. That's one of the affirmations that I use. I understand that my peace is my priority. You have to make that decision. Once you've made the decision, I tell people it's not 9 hours every day. That's about how much I meditate, 9-10 hours a day. I love it. But it's 30 seconds. Can you give 30 seconds to your well-being? Can you give 30 seconds today? And because this, like you said, this relationship that you and I have didn't come overnight. And that, like, are we still going to have in the future times where, like, you're driving me crazy? Yeah, that's going to happen.
Are you going to do that to me? Are you going to drive me crazy?
100%, absolutely. And
No, probably it's the other way around, Meagan.
I think it's going to be both, and it's okay, because I know that those moments are moments that I'm looking for the next level of healing.
Yeah.
So
I think you really hit spot on that piece, that it has to first start with
always,
me.
And it doesn't have to be laboriously. 30 seconds, because I've said this at the beginning, when I needed you to show up for me in a specific way, you were always going to be the bad guy, and I was always going to be the victim. Always. The second I said, I want to spend time on healing me.
Yeah.
The need that you show up in any way. And not just you. My husband, my son, my family, my coworkers. the world and like all of the drama that is our day-to-day lives need to stop showing up for me that way. I live the most peaceful life.
And I know that the moment I begin to heal myself and I learn to love myself and accept myself and forgive myself, my energy shifts. Mm-hmm. The energy I'm putting out to others shifts. And then I create this different space around me for others to walk into and to choose to be next to me because it's safe there.
It's okay.
And if you desire that with someone, start with you in creating a safe place for you within yourself. Meagan, thanks for being with me today. I know you'll be back.
Thanks for having me back. It was so much fun. Thank you.
And in this next week, ponder how you might craft your meaningful life, how you might create a safe place for you to find that authentically beautiful self within. Namaste.
Crafting a meaningful life.